Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes on go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
The PC gave us computing power at home, the internet connected us, and mobile let us do it pretty much anywhere. Now generative AI lets us communicate with technology in our own language using our own senses. But figuring it all out when you're living through it is a totally different story. Welcome to Leading the Shift, a new podcast from Microsoft Azure. I'm your host, Susan Ettlinger. In each episode, leaders will share what they're learning to help you navigate all this change with confidence. Please join us. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers. Episode 342, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. $5.
Welcome to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, the number one place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode.
Hey there, animation addicts. I'm Morgan Stradling.
And I'm Chelsea Robson.
We're back together again for another fabulous episode of the Animation Addicts Podcast. Today, we are continuing on our Pinocchio journey. This time, we are doing another Pinocchio film that was released in 2022, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio.
This is a very different film, except it's also very the same. So we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah, and is this the first time we've done a movie 3 different times? Or not a movie 3 different times, but we've done something that's an adaptation, 3 different adaptations.
I believe so.
I can't think of anything else we've done.
So adapt. Let's do this.
Adapt away. Okay, let's get started with this. Here's some basic information from all across the interwebs, Wikipedia, Box Office Mojo, IMDb, bonus materials, so on and so forth. The release date in the United States was November 9th, 2022, but it was released on Netflix on December 9th, 2022. The production studios was Netflix Animation, Double Dare You, Shadow Machine, The Jim Henson Company, and Taller del Chucho. The distributor Netflix, directors Guillermo del Toro, Mark Gustafsson. Screenwriter was also Guillermo del Toro and Patrick McHale, composer Alexandra Desplat. Budget, $35 million. And box office, we have a wee $109,000. So we're going to round that down to $5, as we have indicated.
It made $5. But let's point out right now, the budget, only $35 million. When the live action adaptation for Disney Plus was stated at $150 million.
Disney has a problem. Disney has a problem. Whether it's their live action films, whether it's their animated films for Disney and Pixar, it's standard nowadays that the average Disney Pixar film is $175 to $200 million. So what on earth are they doing to waste so much money? There is so much bloat.
I think there's money laundering happening. Like,
wow, what a bold accusation.
let's just say something. Like, there's got to be something happening with this because that's insane. $100 million more for something that was far, far inferior.
Yes. And it's just visually, this one looks 10 times better with 10 times less the budget. It's, a lot of times they say, with modern Disney, they're not doing things in-house. So for a lot of their special effects, they're doing it for other studios, or they have other studios and production companies that handle that. But a lot of times I've heard with Disney is they have such a short timeline is as a result, they don't have the time, the animators don't have the time to really work on a great special effects scene from start to finish, and then it's rushed, and so as a result the company will charge them a lot more. It's like, this is a ridiculous timeline, we're going to have to charge you X. I don't know. But when I did the interview with Pete Braungart from The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, that was only a $15 million budget, and I mentioned that in one of my questions, and he was like, yeah, I believe there is a lot of waste in the animation film industry.
Yeah.
And he's having worked in TV, they naturally have much leaner budgets. They have to be really on point with their timeline, especially if you're doing multiple episodes and you have release dates that you're hitting. So yeah, I don't understand. And the reason we're comparing, you're like, why are you talking about Disney? Well, we're talking about Disney because our last episode, we reviewed the 2022 Pinocchio live action remake of their classic, right? And so naturally, since they both came out in the same year, I think
2 months
these
apart.
Yes, 2 months apart. I think we're going to be doing a lot of comparison, especially since that other one is so fresh in our mind. Hey, why not? Why not talk about the other ones that exist, at least the ones that we've done on the show? There are some other, Pinocchio adaptations. It's a very popular, film or book series to adapt. So, but yeah, that is something that very much stands out. And Guillermo del Toro, initially the budget was lower, but he really pushed for it to be this $35 million. He thought, like, in order for this to be really what I need it to be, $35 million is what we need. And like, that's not even that much.
I know.
Comparatively.
Well, and also, I watched the behind the scenes documentary that they have on Netflix. It's about 35 minutes long. And a lot of really great. I love stop motion animation behind the scenes, because it's just incredible how they're able to make it all work. And the set designs, all of the pieces, if they're a puppet or if they're actual, there's like 2 different types of mouths, where they actually have a puppeteering and like a Swiss watch kind of assembly inside, so everything moves, or it's like they just take one mouth off and they put another mouth in. And they had both that happening for each type of character in order to make sure that each character had the right feeling as you're making them. And he said that the whole process of bringing this together took him 15 years to do. And so that to me is artistry. And when you watch a stop motion animation film, there is no shortcut to these things. And so you really do get an artist's take on it, which I love so much. And when I heard that it was only 15, when I heard that he had been in development with this for 15 years, obviously what happens is, like, if somebody's making something, everybody who knows anything knows what's going on with like other projects. And so, for example, when Disney goes out and makes Frozen, you have all of these like copycat companies that come in and try to bank off of the
Frozen
other
Land.
movie.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have these like just copycats that come in and try to make money off of Disney's promotion because it sounds similar and it has a similar something to it. Honestly, another accusation, I think Disney knew that he was putting this together, knew that it was looking good, and said, well, we can't have that. Let's just make our own. Who do we have? Tom Hanks. Sure. Pay you $50 million just to come in. Like, I feel like Disney was the one that was copycatting on this because there were a lot of elements that felt like they were half done.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to follow the original Pinocchio. They wanted to do more of the you're good just the way you are. And this one also had that, but it had it in a very like meaningful way. Like, it was very different how they tied it all together.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go as far as to say that they copied, because I don't know. I'm not going to throw that accusation out there.
I'm accusing.
I will say that Disney has a lot of hubris as a studio.
Yes.
They believe that they are the top dog. We have the best adaptation of Pinocchio. You know, we did it back in the 40s. And therefore, we're going to ride on our laurels. And the next one is going to be fabulous and great. And if there's this other one that exists and they're going to put out the same year. Yeah, good luck. Good luck, because we are the best.
Right.
So
I should rephrase that. I'm not accusing. I am Allegedly.
Yes, the old lawyer speak, allegedly.
Don't sue me. You can have my $5, Disney.
$5. All right. So, yeah, one thing right away, I had been aware of this film. When you were talking about that it's been in production for 15 years, it wasn't that they were animating it for 15 years. It's that he was trying to get this up off the ground for 15 years. And like you were talking about artistry, I think that's something that's really just lacking in modern Disney is the artist touch. Like a lot of times corporate comes in and says, hey, we're making this remake. We are doing this Marvel film. And okay, now we have to just find someone to make the movie. Whereas that's not really how films in general have been made. Usually it's an artist who has a vision, who has an idea, and then they're going to bring that to life. And I saw a thing on X recently. And so the post says, it's by Jess Purviance. It says, I was sitting with an older animator watching Disney's first feature-length cartoon, Snow White. We both were amazed at the film. I asked him, how much do you think it would cost to make this today? I'll never forget his answer. We don't know how to do it. And then I saw another post where someone retweeted this and they basically said, the reason this looks so good and we can't do this today is because this was made by artists. Mm-hmm. These artists were actors and they were incredibly talented and they were visionaries and I feel like not everybody, obviously, but that just doesn't exist anymore. You're more just a cog in the machine.
And adding AI to it, it's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what is human touch? Who cares if we don't need humans,
right?
The computer can do it for us, right? And so, going with this and how it took so long to get here, I really respect it because he had a vision. He knew he was very inspired by Pinocchio, the story, and so he always wanted to make this film. It was a dream for him, and so he kept pushing, didn't give up. Finally, it was able to be picked up. I believe they said it was announced. I mean, I remember when we first started the site, it was announced in 2008 with a release of 2013 or 2014. And then it went into developmental It got shelved and just had a hard time for a while. It's just a hard time for a wee period of time. And then finally in January 2017, it was announced they had another screenplay. They finally started the animation in the summer of 2020 and then finished it in 2022 and then, got that release date. So this was a labor of love. And immediately from the very beginning, we talk about our theater experiences or our first thoughts. I thought, wow, oh my goodness, this is already a million times better.
Yeah.
Just not even talking about the animation. The animation was stunning and beautiful, and I love the stop motion. I love the unique design, but just everything about it, just the character. Within the first minute, I'm like, oh, I really like what I'm seeing here.
Yes. And so when I first, I mentioned on our last episode with the other Pinocchio, I started watching this one thinking that it was the first, and I was like, this doesn't seem like Disney at all. It was just like, what is this? And then I was like, oh, this is Guillermo del Toro's one. And so anyway, I was like, we have to review this.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was really glad we are doing this because it's the moment it starts. Like I said, the Disney version, it tried to put in these elements of the original story, and it just didn't. They didn't do it well at all. And with Guillermo, he had a vision of this is the abstract emotion that I want to convey in a picture form, and he was able to do it, I believe.
Yeah, I was just watching. We have the sun, the shoes that he makes for him, the accordion, him singing the song. I'm just sitting here thinking, wow, I'm already so invested in these characters and what's happening here. The other one, we try to make us feel bad that he has lost his wife and his son. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've lost, he's talking about it, mumbling to himself, like, feel bad. I've lost my son and my wife, trauma. But in this one, we see it. We see the son working with him, and we see that bond that they have together, and that they worked together, and they were woodcutters or carpenters together, and they were working on things in the church together. And he built shoes for him. It was really special, and we see the bond that they have and how much he loved his son. And then that's established, and then the son dies, and there is a long period of grief that he has. He's a different man, and he's not able to overcome it, which is very real.
Yeah. Yes. And one other thing that I thought was very interesting, from the moment they bring up church and they bring up the statue of Christ on the cross, and like just even having that in there evokes a very specific thought process when you're watching it, especially for somebody who is a Christian or Catholic, or, has some kind of belief in Christ. And then having that, going back and forth with a carpenter working with his son, and then his son dies, so there's a lot of that, the whole thing is about death and what comes next, and grieving through it, and not even just what comes next, because the what comes next part is kind of a weird thing, especially when you juxtapose it with the Christian theology. It's like not there at all. But it's still bringing in a thought process and trying to bring you into a mood. That is, once again, it is an artist trying to depict an emotion as opposed to just somebody trying to retell a story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. And I really felt for him when his son died. I felt sad for what grief had done to him. But at the same time, we've seen people where that is real, that grief really and death destroys people. You can kind of go two ways with it. People can come out better, or sometimes people end up worse, and it just is soul crushing and they are not able to overcome. And that's a tragedy. And so he's going down this tragedy route where he's drinking. And he had planted this tree, and it was like a great memory of him, and like a little memorial, instead of being buried in a graveyard. You have the pine cone that's planted into this pine tree, but it's the perfect one. Like, again, there's all of these very much Christian elements.
Yeah.
That are like the perfect pine cone is the only one that will do. I mean, if you're looking for them, you will see them, which I think that's pretty cool, because I think a lot of films, at least I didn't feel a lot of symbolism.
No, yeah, they try to rip it out.
Yeah, which really devoids it of anything of value, and taking it to the next level where you're able to resonate with it, and I think that's a big weakness of modern Disney, is that they don't have that there. But this, it really does. And in this, he's a drunkard, and in this drunken stupor, he cuts down the tree, and I'm going to recreate him. He builds the boy. And, then in the morning he wakes up and he's alive. And I really loved the design element that he had this like hole from the tree. It was like an imperfect part, like right over his heart.
Yeah.
Where the cricket lived. And I thought that was great, because he had like a little spot that he could tuck away in and interact, with him and talk to him. And he had said, hey, this is a great tree. It's going to be my home, but I'm going to write my memoir. And then suddenly he gets whisked away on this journey. I did love the cricket's voice, which is Ewan McGregor.
Yes.
Who
doesn't love Ewan McGregor?
He's great. He's so great. I just, as I heard him, I'm like, yes, I like what you did here. I like him. I think this was great.
Okay. The fact that he's singing in this also makes me really happy, because one of my favorite movies is Moulin Rouge. And so it's like, my gift is my song, and this one's for you. I had this whole soundtrack memorized. I loved it. It's a weird one to love, but I loved it. And the fact that every time he tried to sing about his dad and he just gets cut off just was a wonderful gag. I loved it.
Yes. Finally, at the very, very end, the payoff comes.
Yeah.
Where he gets to sing in the end credits. I loved that.
But his whole story as well, it was a lot more thoughtful and a lot more just like needed, because how he gives up his only wish to be able to have Pinocchio back and everything. It was very well, every part of the story had a good payoff. And I love a good payoff, man. Y'all should know this by now.
Well, I think that's a thoughtful film or piece of art.
Yeah.
That's thinking of all of those elements, and they're tying loose ends or allowing for something to pay dividends at the end or to pay off at the end. It really adds these different layers of complexity and satisfaction to it, which this one did, and I was going back right before I was reviewing Pinocchio, the Adventures of Pinocchio, which is the original tale, and it's too complicated to summarize here. Pinocchio goes on all sorts of adventures. There's all sorts of animals that he meets along the way and things that happen to him. And there are obviously elements that are iconic to the Disney one that aren't really there. They're kind of adapted. Like Pleasure Island's not a thing, but they do turn into donkeys because they kind of they're skipping school and having a good time the whole time, right? And there's a few elements that obviously are core. And this one of him supposed to go into school, but then ends up going instead to like a traveling puppet show is something that does happen. And this element of kind of becoming a slave, I'm the master and you're my slave. And I thought I feel like there's this weird aversion to the concept of like master slave nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
Where you can't it's as if we've completely forgotten the entire history of the world and just focused on this very small part of U.S. history and superseded that to become the most important part of the whole history, right? And so as a result, it's like you can't mention the word master and you can't be a slave. But this is something that has happened since the beginning of time, and it is a tragedy and it is terrible in every aspect. And so here we have Pinocchio becoming a slave to this puppet master and says, "Oh, I'm sending money to your dad." First of all, he makes him sign this contract and he gets indebted in this way. He can't get out of it and then taken. And then, "Oh yeah, don't worry, we're partners together and here's your money, here's your half and I'm going to send it to your dad." And seeing that he never has a way out because people are evil and they will take advantage of you. And that's one of the themes in Pinocchio is that his main goal, he's so naive and he's just living in the world. And he's just kind of seeing it from fresh eyes. And I was reading that in the original Pinocchio stories, it was based on, this was kind of the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in a way where a lot of these very naive peasants would leave and go to the cities because a lot of people were working in the cities and they'd leave their provincial town and then they'd have to go experience the real world to make ends meet, whatever. And then were really taken advantage of and really just had a hard time adjusting to this new world, obviously, because there's lots of evil people all around, always have been, everywhere, wherever you are, right? So this was in Italy. And I thought that was very interesting that was kind of one of the ideas that sprung forth, one of the themes that was told. But that is very much Pinocchio, is that he's just this naive boy and he's told, go to school and be a good boy. And that his motivations are so surface level, like go to school, be a good boy. And in this one, that's kind of what he's trying to do. But along the way...
Obey your papa.
Obey, yes. But along the way, he gets taken advantage of constantly, which is so heartbreaking because he's just innocent. Why does it have to happen to him? Why couldn't he have just gone to school? Why couldn't he have just lived with his dad? And it's disappointing because you want to have the perfect life and you want to have a life that is free of all of this pain and burden, if you will. That was one of the words that they used and they talked about. But for most people, that doesn't happen. The ideal isn't what happens in life. There are people who have really good lives and to, your degree of bad things happening to you definitely varies. But I liked how it was representing this. It was not necessarily any fault of his own. It was just he was young and innocent and naive, but not in a bad way. He just hadn't learned yet. And even when he kind of should have learned, he still kept falling into these traps. And the themes of death and redemption and rebirth were very strong in this one. And I really appreciated the message that it was trying to tell.
Yeah. Well, and then you had the whole aspect of bringing the war into it with the fascism and,
Well, was it a real war?
Yeah, it was Mussolini.
It wasn't. Okay, but it wasn't. It was okay. So it was Mussolini. Okay, it wasn't Hitler.
No, it was Mussolini
because they didn't have the Nazi stuff on it. So, okay, that makes sense. Okay.
And so, but the whole thing was, and also, the believing of propaganda, the fact that these little boys are just trying to impress their dad. And oh, it was just heartbreaking. And they're like, oh, I'm not afraid to die. And Pinocchio's like, well, no, I've died it a couple times. There's some interesting rabbits out there, So it's like for him, he's like, but then you have the little boys who are like, I don't know. It's just every little bit is showing how everything is just so silly. And in reality, the deeper messages are how we interact with each other, the lives that intertwine with our own, and what makes human life special is the fragility of it, and the fact that you may lose it. And that was something that, like, modern Disney's never going to talk about that. Like, that's not a thing. And I mean, just even the depth of that, and how the lion goddess thing,
the Sphinx,
she is talking to him and saying, well, that is part of it. You have to learn. And every time you come here, you have to wait a little extra long, a little longer. And then when you go back, you'll start over. But every time it's just a little bit longer. You have to wait. And, it's like, and maybe you go back and you wait too long. And so now the people that you loved are no longer there. And he's like, wait, what? What are you talking? And so he's trying to learn these things. But it's so hard in the situations that he's in. But each one of them, from his father saying, you have to obey your papa, to, and then also him coming in and saying war is bad because it takes away your family members. And then you go into Puppeteer, and he's saying, you must obey because I own you. And then in the third one is, you must obey because you must serve your fatherland. And then, but war is good. War is how you know that you are strong and brave, and just how mixed up all of these views really are when you're looking at the long form of life. It was very impactful.
Yeah. And that's one of the, we've been talking about it a lot, the films that make you think and ponder are the ones that are the good ones, right? Or typically, not always. But I feel like this one really, really did that. And a lot of themes, like you said, death and rebirth, the journey of life, redemption. And so let's talk about the end. So the very end, he basically is immortal. Every time he dies, he has to wait a little bit longer to return. And in the moment where he needs it, the time that if he were to wait the whole time, Geppetto would die. And so she gives him a choice of saying, well, you can become human, but you will eventually die. And he accepts it. And I thought, but is he giving up anything? Yeah, it didn't feel like he really appreciated his immortality.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I think that was maybe like the one weak point where I was like, does this mean anything? Like, of course, he's going to choose that for his dad. It didn't seem like it was a sacrifice in any way. Because, or at least he didn't pause and think like, oh, well, I do die a lot.
Right.
That's just like such a nitpick, but I thought that was kind of interesting. And then, at the very end, he gets to see what all of us see is he sees Geppetto pass. And then, that's not the only one. They could have ended it there.
Yeah.
But then he sees the cricket pass. And then it's
the monkey.
Yes, then this is kind of the cycle of life, and it's really hard. I thought that was a really very sad way to end it, but very true to life and the journey that we all have to go through at some point.
Yeah, the fact that he put him in a little matchbox and kept him in his heart, that was so
yes,
so sweet. But I also really appreciated that the cricket was telling this whole story to the rabbits in the afterlife. Because that makes a lot more sense because he died. How is he telling us?
Well, he kept talking. Yeah, he kept talking, and I was like, "Wait a second." Yeah, and then we finally get it that he's still alive. He's just hanging out at the cards table.
I like it.
He hitched his wagon to something good. It was great.
Yeah.
Animation wise, fabulous. So the studio that had done this,
they had 3 studios
doing the animation. Yeah, one of the main ones was called Shadow Machine. And Shadow Machine is known for doing Robot Chicken. And he said, they are the best of the best. These are the ones I definitely want to work with. And then there were other ones as well.
There's a studio in Guadalajara that he is very loyal to because he wants to be able to elevate Mexican industry down there. And so he wanted to be able to show how, and all of the main characters were done by that studio in order to give them a leg up, I guess. But they were like, anyway, all of the ending product was fantastic. And so to say one studio is better than another, I don't know, because they all just did an amazing job.
Yeah. And with the lighting, I feel like in the last 2022 Pinocchio, the lighting was just dull, flat, lackluster, really dark. But this one was dark as well. But because there's darkness, but they know how to light things, so things don't just blend all into one big nothing, right? And so things stand out, and it has this dark grittiness to it that's real. But again, it's a film, and they lit it like a proper film. And so I thought that was really good. Frank Passingham was the cinematographer for that. And yeah, the stop motion was just such a joy to see. It was, having watched Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul recently, they're stop motion, but they have a different style. And this one very much felt slightly chunkier in its movements and, not a little more rigid as far as, the from scene to scene or shot to shot. And I like that. I felt that's kind of like that gritty, old school stop motion vibe. I really felt that. And I really loved the characters. I felt like he went total different direction with the director of his, with the design of this Pinocchio and, everyone else in there. And yeah, good stuff.
I felt like this was a really just excellent movie. And I don't think that I would give it like a full 5 stars because it's like, that's not quite there for me. But I would definitely give this a strong 4. And I think that I hope that they do way more movies that are from artists and people who want to share a message or a feeling as opposed to just regurgitate a story.
I will say, I do like to bash on Netflix and the Netflix model, how it's totally changed maybe the movie viewing game for worse in some aspects. But I will say they do take chances on these smaller artists that are, former animators or just directors, or they're not able to get this off the ground in a studio environment because it's not going to make money, or, the cost benefit analysis it's just not going to do it for us. And there's been multiple times, think of Klaus, there's just lots of movies that recently I'm just like, yes, I do appreciate Netflix for allowing these films to come to life. Yeah. I just wish they would do a little theatrical run for 2 months, please. that would be my happy medium, but oh well.
I'm sure the theaters would like that as well.
Indeed. Everyone will be happy. Right? So one thing I really loved is the music. I thought the music was such delight. It was so fun, and you can fall into a weird trap if you're trying to do music in an animated film because Disney has the corner, the market on that. But this was, I don't know, this is the way that Pinocchio would sing, and just the style of music was something that felt so new and fresh.
It was a very pure sound too.
Yes, it was sweet and it was fun. And Alexander Desplat did the music. He's done, the last 2 Harry Potter films. He's done the Pride and Prejudice soundtrack, which is fabulous. There's one, he did one of the Twilight ones. I mean, he's done, you go to his IMDb and it's just like never ending. He's very, very much accomplished. And so again, as we were going through this, I'm like, yes, these are they have the right team here. But then as far as lyrics, it was Guillermo del Toro and 2 other people, I think Mark and one other person, who helped do the lyrics for these songs. So very much, it wasn't that they just brought on a lyricist or a songwriter. They said, hey, okay, this is the song he's going to sing, and put it, I'm not sure, but imagine now put it to song for us. And yeah, I liked it. There were a lot interesting things here that they took a lot of liberty, and I appreciate they added a lot of elements that were unique and different. Like they took the story of Pinocchio as the starting point, and then they were able to branch out and build other aspects from there. One of the things was the giant dogfish That's in in the original. It's a giant dogfish instead of a whale. So some of these elements that we now associate exclusively with Pinocchio are just the Disney Pinocchio.
Right.
And so he's able to bring back some of the elements from the original, which I thought was great. And he wasn't trying to create a Disney version of Pinocchio. He created Pinocchio in his style, in his way. And I thought that was great. And with like you were talking about with the war elements, that's definitely not in there. But by bringing that in there, it was able to mix it up. So we're not just kind of following maybe some of the same path that we've seen before. And it diverted it in an interesting way. And we were able to see that father-son dynamic play out, which I thought was really, really cool and great. This film did win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature that year. So that's pretty amazing because it was up against quite a few things. But yeah, I mean, again, that's one of the problems I have with the Netflix model, going back to this, is that I felt like even this past year, so many of the films that win, you've never seen. Like that's now modern Hollywood and the modern award landscape is the films are these really weird artsy films that like didn't get a wide release, or they only played in a few screens, but because they check all the right boxes or they tell the right story, then they're the ones that end up winning. Whereas for a long period of time, like the critically acclaimed ones or the audience, the box office did have a part in it. It's like, wow, this was a very popular film, obviously, because it was a good film. And that aligned. And I do feel like the critic perception is different than the audience perception nowadays, where that wasn't always the case. Now, this wasn't the case. I believe both audiences and critics agreed on this one. Let's see. I think it's just really funny that they had to call it Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio because, normally you just say Pinocchio, parentheses 2022. It's fine. But it's just like, oh, there already is another 2022. We need to differentiate even more. And, we have him. Why not? So yeah, this one, the tomato meter was 96% for the critics, certified fresh, and 90% for all of the audience. And, I'm not going to lie. I think I knew this one came out, but I didn't really want to see it. I didn't see the trailers very much. Like I knew it was existing, but it didn't draw me in, which is really, really unfortunate because as soon as this started playing, I said, wow, this is something that I really enjoy. This is something that I'm glad I'm watching. And so I guess I have a problem of judging books by their movie poster. Not books, but movies by their movie poster.
I think it also was the fact that there was another Pinocchio, and I was at least fatigued at Disney for bringing this back. And so it's like, oh, not only is Disney remaking theirs, but we have another one out there. I can't even handle it.
It's too much. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So you have already done your review or your rating. I'm between a 4 and a 4.5. I'm going to give it 4.5. I thought this was splendid. This was so well done. This was an adaptation done right. This is something, hey, other movies exist. Other movies of this property are classics, but we're not trying to be that. So how can we be you? And how can we do something different? I think there's lots of different ways to tell a story, and they all can be great. And this is a perfect example. We've now done kind of a trifecta of, I don't even want to say good, better, best, like great, bad.
Right.
As far as the Pinocchio of Disney's, it's just such a shame because when you see what can be done, it just feels like a waste. Like I feel bad for all the actors that are involved in these live action remakes sometimes. Like it just feels like a gig. Something I did, but it's not something no one's ever going to want to talk about again. It doesn't have this lasting legacy. Whereas you make these movies that really stand out and mean something, they're going to live a lot longer. So that is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio 2022. All right, go to rotoscopers.com and give us your thoughts on Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. You can also give a little compare and contrast of the Disney 2022 if you've seen that one. Or you can give us a voicemail, rotoscopers.com/voicemails. Or give us a call at 406-646-6575. We love to hear your thoughts. We've called this our Disney Plus remake series, but I think now we've been kind of all over the map. But in the line of Disney remakes, I mean, obviously the one we just did is not a Disney remake. We get it. But it just fit too perfect. And Chelsea already started watching it, so we needed it. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on all the different podcast platforms. And if you can, leave us a 5-star review. I think we're at $3.99 on Apple Podcasts, and we just need one more to hit 400. It'd be really cool to get 500. So if you haven't even given us a review, go give us a 5-star review on there. Let's see if in 2025 we can hit 5-star or 500. 5 stars. I'm stuck in the rating. See if we can have 500 reviews. But right now we're looking to just get one. Will you be the one? That is the question. So thanks for joining us for this episode. Until next time, we are the Rotoscopers. One thing that I really enjoyed in this version was how different Geppetto was. And Geppetto in this version wasn't wishing for Pinocchio. He was wishing for his son. He wanted his son back, and that was obviously first and foremost. And then in this fit of drunkenness, he ends up creating Pinocchio, and Pinocchio comes to life. And so when Pinocchio appears, he's not a welcome addition to his home. He doesn't want him. He's kind of scared of him initially, and then he definitely becomes a burden, and he's not wanted. And that's a struggle because there's not this loving relationship between Pinocchio and Geppetto. Geppetto still struggles because he wants his son. And Pinocchio just wants to be loved. And he doesn't really understand what a burden is and why he is one. Yet he's here and he's been introduced into this family. And Geppetto has to go through this process of learning to accept and then love Pinocchio. And we see that throughout the film, and definitely at the end where he is sacrificing to go and find Pinocchio. The sacrifice to go and find Pinocchio means a lot more than it does in Disney's 2022 version, where he supposedly sells all these, not supposedly, he does, he sells the clocks. And that's supposed to be our big moment of, wow, he must really love Pinocchio because he gave those up. But in this one, you feel the transformation of Geppetto and his shift towards Pinocchio throughout the film. It's gradual, but it's there. And at the very end, their love and bond feels real. Just as Pinocchio has become a real boy, the bond between Pinocchio and Geppetto is real. And he's not replacing the son. And that is the transformation that Geppetto has to come through and accept, that his son is gone and he won't come back. And Pinocchio is not this pseudo son to replace him. He is now your son. He is a different person. And you have a different obligation with him. You have to treat him just as good. And I just love that. I thought that was very deep, and it really added lots of layers to Geppetto's character, but then also Pinocchio, because you're thrown into this world that doesn't necessarily love you or want you. And that's hard.
You've been listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag Animation Addicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.